Hey, what's up? This is Sully from Godsmack. Strap on those boots, baby, because you are now in the trenches of the war room with the one and only Mistress Carrie right here on the Mistress Carrie podcast.
What's up? This is Joe Rogan, and you're listening to Mistress Carrie.
Her hair so lovely. Pretty eyes.
Hey, this is Brent from Shinedown, and you're listening to Mistress Carrie. Hey, Carrie, go put your bra on, girl.
Hey, this is Steven Tyler, and you be listening to the baddest bitch in Boston, Mistress Carrie.
What's up? This is Aaron from Stain, and you're listening to Mistress Carrie.
Hi, everybody. This is Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters, and you're listening to the one, the only Mistress Carrie.
Hey, this is David from the band Disturbed, and you're listening to the baddest bitch in Boston, Mistress Carrie.
Hi, Bruce Dickinson here from Iron Maiden. Yes, indeed, Miss Whiplash herself, Mistress Carrie, is here to unchain your brain.
Hi, this is Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. You're listening to Mistress Carrie.
This is Dennis Leary. You are listening to my favorite, Mistress Carrie.
Hey, this is Corey from Stone Sour, and you have the privilege of listening to Mistress Carrie.
Oh, God. Oh, yeah.
Hey, it's Mistress Carrie, reporting for duty from MCHQ for episode 196 of the Mistress Carrie podcast. And before we get to this week's guest, Jake Diab from Autumn Kings, I want to remind you about everything that you're going to find online at mistresscarrie.com. You can check out every episode of the Mistress Carrie podcast and every episode of my weekly video show, Cocktails in the War Room. You'll find my concert calendar with all of the shows coming through New England, my blog, the links to all of my socials. You can send me a message straight to the studio. Just click the Message the Studio button. And you can shop in the online Mistress Carrie store. Find all that and more at mistresscarrie.com. When I launched the Mistress Carrie podcast, I wanted it to be a little bit of everything. To keep you in touch with all of the bands I know you already love, talk to rock's legends, and to introduce you to new artists that I think you're really going to like. And that is the case this week. My guest this week, Jake Diab, is the guitarist and one of the vocalists in Autumn Kings, a band breaking out of the Detroit music scene that's made up of a bunch of Canadians that just became Americans. Trust me, I'll get to it. Jake and I talked about the USO tour that the band just went on, playing for U.S. troops overseas, what it was like growing up in Canada, and what it was like going through the process to become an American citizen. We also talked about his love of ice hockey and the band's new song, Sleep When I'm Dead. If you're a fan of bands like Linkin Park and Fall Out Boy, you're going to love Autumn Kings. So allow me to introduce you to Jake Diab from Autumn Kings. What's up, Jake?
What's up?
How are you?
I'm good. I got my late afternoon tea, keeping me nice and caffeinated. You too? Is that coffee?
I'm a coffee person. Yeah, I sip it all day.
Right. Much cooler than I am. I completely understand.
Love your... Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say coffee's the bomb, but you go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, if you've been singing all day, having some tea in the afternoon is probably a good thing.
Very soothing. It is very soothing. But I think you're about to compliment me, so I'm going to say thank you in advance.
Yeah, well, I was going to compliment you on your room because... one of the things I love about being able to use something like Zoom is I've been on the radio a long time. I'm used to interviewing people without being able to see them.
Right.
But being able to see you in your environment, your studio is very cool. I have studio envy.
Yes. Oh, well, thank you so much. Oh, it's nice. And it's definitely a dream to be able to do this all day long and just record in the studio with the coffee and work with people that I love working with. And it's good. It's awesome.
Yeah, having your own workspace, I've learned, is so much nicer than sharing a studio with a bunch of other disgusting radio DJs. My studio is the cleanest studio I've ever worked in because I'm the only one allowed in.
That's incredible. No, I think you're setting good rules for yourself. And are you in Worcester, right? I got that right.
Oh, well, outside of Worcester. Yeah, outside of Boston, outside of Worcester, in New England. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. That's awesome. Massachusetts, East Coast. We got to get there. I've heard nothing but beautiful things. My brother just went to Boston last week, and he's like, the history, the architecture, and everything over there is pretty phenomenal.
Boston's a fun town. Yeah, we got great bands, great food. Now, you're Canadian, so you guys are known to be like nice. That's the stereotype of Canadians, is that you guys are just so nice all the time. Bostonians get painted as being assholes, like that we're mean and crass, which is kind of true, but we're also like really nice and super loyal. And once we love you forever.
Okay, so I have two thoughts to that. The first is I'm only half nice now because I just became an American citizen in April. So
interesting.
I'm American. Oh yeah, no. And the second thing is really interesting what you just said about Boston is I find that East Coasters have a more gruff exterior sometimes, but on the inside, they will kick it with you and they'll hang out and they actually give a crap. Like in Canada, and this is such a generalization, I do not mean this for everybody, but sometimes you'll meet people who are really polite on the surface, but then there's not as much depth. Whereas the Bostonians will be a little, hey, asshole, cut me off in traffic. But then it's like you're at the bar, hey, what up, dude?
I forget who it was that explained it to me this way, and it was more of an East Coast, West Coast thing in the States, but I think it's exactly what you're talking about. The definition of nice and kind are different. For example, people in Canada are nice to you, right? So if you get a flat tire on the side of the road, they'll stop and be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry that happened to you. And then they'll leave. Whereas a Bostonian or an East Coaster will pull over and be like, what the fuck? You're blocking traffic, and then push you out of the way and change the tire for you because they're kind. They're just not going to be nice about it.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. Straight to the point. Yeah. It's even funny. So Tim Hortons is the big thing here in Canada where I currently am. And the way they'll order is like, can I get a sandwich, please? And by any chance? And an American will be like, I'll get the sandwich. Right. There's no right or wrong. It's just sort of difference in demeanor. But it's nice that I get to experience both cultures. And I got a lot of friends in Windsor and then a lot of friends in Detroit and all over both countries. And yeah, we just went. I read a little bit about your military background, which is freaking awesome. And it's crazy because we just did a military tour with AFE, Armed Forces Entertainment, and wild. So I'm sure that's something that we'll talk about. But
yeah, absolutely. It was one of the things that when I was doing research on you guys, I have a long history of doing work with the military, and I'm actually on AFN. So I'm on the rock station that they get on the bases and the ships and stuff. And so anytime, and there are a lot of rock bands that do this, which I think is wonderful, that you take the time to go over and play for our troops.
Yes.
And what a lot of people don't understand is that those tours, by and large, are self-funded. And it's not cheap to get the gear over there, to get your crew over there, for you to travel over there. But I know firsthand from so many of my friends, and I'm married to an active duty Marine as well, how much it means to them that people come over and want to visit them and play for them. So the fact that you guys have gone over and played for troops overseas is pretty spectacular.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And amen to all of that. And thank you. And thank your husband for you guys' service. And I think one of the most interesting things is the people in the military over there they're stripped of the day-to-day luxuries that we all take for granted over here. And that's why it means so much more to them. And what's even crazier is the battles that they're fighting, metaphorically and literally, are ones that the general public really doesn't hear about. Like, we don't understand what's going on, and being there on the ground and hearing what some of these service members were telling us and what they're fighting and going through. There was one show we did, I think it was in, I want to say Yokosuka, Japan. And one of the fellows there, he's like, guys, if there's not a big crowd tonight, don't take it personally. They've got, I won't go into it, but they were doing particular course of action that necessitated them being off the base. And he's like, nobody knows about this back in the mainland, but it's happening. So I just gained a much deeper appreciation for what those folks over there do. Not to mention, they're some of the toughest people I've met. I mean, we hung out and partied one night with some of the guys and girls. They could stay up till like 4 a.m. and get up at 6, and they're like cranking 1,000 push-ups. I'm like, dude, I thought I was like half tough, and I got humbled. It was amazing.
I was an embedded journalist in Iraq in 2006 and in Afghanistan in 2011. And when I was in Iraq, I bumped into the guys in Drowning Pool in Baghdad on a USO tour.
Oh.
And I've known those guys forever, right? And Rolling Stone, the reason why they ended up on that tour, Rolling Stone had done an interview and a poll with service members. And the biggest song for service members was Bodies, right? So Drowning Pool ends up on this big USO tour. They've done several in their careers. And the guys in Drowning Pool asked if I would go up and introduce them. So this is the 5th anniversary of 9/11. I'm in Baghdad, embedded with U.S. troops. Drowning Pool says, will you go and introduce us? So I'm up on stage in front of thousands of soldiers armed to the teeth. It is still, and I've seen a lot of mosh pits in my day, the craziest mosh pit I have ever seen. Dudes crowd surfing with automatic weapons on their backs. It was insane. And they are some of the most passionate rock fans that you will ever see.
Yes, that is exactly right. That is such an amazing story. And that was when the tensions were at their highest, right? This is 06, right? Gosh, that's crazy.
Yeah, there was no bigger target than a female American journalist with purple hair back then, I will tell you.
You still had the purple hair back then. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Consistency. Oh, that's so good. Yeah, I know. Military is great. And they were really respectful. And we went to a place called Kunsan, aka the Wolfpack in South Korea. And they have a whole bunch of people that go in there and then they become generals. They graduate and they go on and climb the ranks to a really high level in the military. And we got to sit down and have some lunch with them. And they were telling us some of those stories of the war in Iraq and 2011, the Bin Laden raid. I mean, and the craziest thing about some of these guys is because you get the stereotypical image concocted in your head about tough, like rah, rah. Some of these guys were the most gentle, caring, humble people that I've ever met. And their strength of character was like, I was so inspired. These weren't savage killers that, you sometimes you get fed propaganda of what it's really like. These guys are professionals. They just had a job to do and they had a mission to execute. And yeah, it just really opened our eyes to what those people actually go through and how they actually are. And I had nothing but respect for it.
Well, they're
Not
incredibly disciplined.
So disciplined. So disciplined. Yeah, we call it the military mindset. We try to apply that to our music. It's like every day do the work, even when you don't feel like doing the work, right?
Well,
it's
people
like
say that about rock and metal fans all the time. They think that we're all, insane and crazy. And anybody that has ever gone to a show or, has met a stranger with the T-shirt on of your favorite band and you start talking to them, rock and metal fans are a community that support each other. They're incredibly generous, charity-driven. It's just that, looking at us sometimes you're like, those are some scary motherfuckers over there.
Yeah, some scary mofos. But again, it's like the Bostonian thing earlier. Once you dig a little deeper and get to know them, you realize that the picture didn't tell the full story, right?
I want to ask you about the citizenship thing because I had this same conversation with Tyler Connolly from Theory of a Dead Man, who's been a longtime friend of mine. He went through the process. A lot of people have done it for work reasons or whatever, that you become a U.S. citizen. And as there are all of these debates about immigration and all of that stuff, I always find it interesting to talk to somebody that actually went through the process. So how was it for you to actually study for the test, and why did you want to do it in the first place?
So the reason I wanted to do it in the first place, and then I'll get to the test, how it was, because that's very interesting too. The reason I wanted to do it is it was really, I'll tell you, it was a selfish reason. I was a Canadian and we always grew up admiring America because it was 10 times bigger. They had everything we wanted. I lived in the border city, Windsor, Ontario in Canada. So Detroit was literally a stone's throw away. I'm a Detroit Red Wings fan growing up. Got all the American rock stations.
I won't hold that against you as the Bruins fan over here.
Yes. Hey, we're both original six. So
That's right.
I have a lot of respect. And going to Wings games, getting inundated with rock music from 101.1 The Riff and 89X. There was just something about the US and the spirit, the entrepreneurial spirit, especially as it relates to music too. All of our favorite bands, Metallica's my favorite band of all time, Rise Against #2, Green Day. I mean, I could go on and on and on. Americans think big too. This is one of the things I love. There's a level of confidence that Canadians would sometimes get uncomfortable about, but I feel a lot of my American friends can proudly stand behind whatever it is that they're pursuing. So it was really for opportunity and for the band. We were always advised by some of our music industry friends who are based in Toronto in Canada, which is probably, you could say, the LA of Canada in terms of music industry impact. And they always told us, you want to sign a record deal, which we haven't done yet. That may come soon, in the US first, because if you sign it in Canada, you sort of get looked at as being a Canadian band. But the goal for Autumn Kings was to go worldwide. So I knew USA was the place I had to be for all those reasons. Plus, I'm really entrepreneurially driven anyway, so that just felt like a good fit for my pursuits. And taking the civics test, this was incredible because I give my American friends crap all the time because they don't even know half the answers to these questions. I'm like, I know more about American history than you.
That's true.
And yeah, so it's like, who was the president during World War I? Woodrow Wilson. Name 3 of the 13 original states. So I'm studying the Constitution and I'm studying this list of 100 questions. And over and over and over, I would just beat them into my head. And I'm glad they do that because I actually got to understand the country that I was going to become a citizen in. And they only ask you 6 questions. So it's not the hardest test in the world. It's kind of like basic memorizing. But what it did do is it made me more aware of what it is, like where we come from and where we're going.
So when you passed the test, which you did, and became an American citizen, do you have dual citizenship now?
Yeah, I have dual citizenship, which is really nice.
Were your parents mad that you wanted to become a dirty American?
No, they're dirty Americans with me too. They don't mind. No, it's great. It's really great because we still have the Canadian citizenship, and there's things about Canada that I love. There's things about the US I love. I think there are areas in both that they could use a little bit of refinement. But being in this part of the world, I feel with everything going on right now, I talk about this with my partner and with my band and my friends all the time. The United States is number one. It's just a blessed land. I mean, the minerals and resources that we have,
and how beautiful it is.
How beautiful it is, and the fact that we're separated by 2 oceans, like that is a blessing I don't think most of us think about on a day-to-day. And it wasn't until like all the war stuff started happening that I realized, my gosh, thank God we have 2 massive bodies of water surrounding us, So it's been great. I'm really glad I got that citizenship, and the fans love it too. I say it every time we get on stage. They're like, "Yeah, let's go."
Well, let's not slight Canada when it comes to music, because there have been some unbelievable bands that have come out of Canada, and being from Toronto, I've only been there once. I was up there for Live 8, actually.
Oh yeah,
and I had heard what a great party town it was and how much fun it was. And I was walking around with like Josh Todd from Buckcherry and like all of these guys, and we're walking around and it was dead. Mm-hmm. There was nobody in the bars. There was nobody on the streets. Nobody was doing anything. And I was like, I thought Toronto was fun. And then we went into a restaurant and a bar, and the place was empty. And we asked the bartender, like, what is going on? We just happened to be there during the International Alcoholics Anonymous Convention.
Oh, wow.
And every bar was completely empty to the point where they were just closing and we were like, oh, okay, that explains it.
Makes sense.
Because I had heard Toronto was a blast. But,
it is.
But when you talk about being so close to Detroit, when you're talking about legacy of rock and roll in the United States, Detroit is right up there with the biggest cities there is.
Got everybody. You've got Kid Rock, who we had the pleasure of meeting. We actually did a residency at Kid Rock's restaurant that was inside Little Caesars Arena where the Wings played back in 2018, 2019. Got to meet Kid Rock. And then, of course, you have Bob Seger. You got Eminem more on the hip hop side. But he is influenced from rock.
Alice Cooper.
I mean, God, the list just goes on. And yes, to your point, Canada, I love Canada. Nickelback is one of the main reasons that I actually pursued a career in music. They're Canadian boys too. Although I think some of them became U.S. citizens. Tyler Connolly, Theory of a Dead Man, same thing. BC boy. 3 Days Grace, another huge influence of ours, right? 1,000 Foot Crutch, Billy Talent. I mean, there's so many.
Yeah.
So it's good.
Can we talk? I mean, you said, that Metallica is like your favorite band, but I have a theory about music, right? That there's 2 phases of your musical kind of identity. There's the soundtrack to your childhood. So that's what you get exposed to unwillingly when you're little by your parents, older siblings, the cool uncle, the neighbor's kids, whoever it is. And then you hear something and you say, oh, wait, I like that.
Yeah.
And from then on, it's different. So what was the soundtrack to your childhood?
That's you just said it. You just explained exactly what I think about Metallica, because they were the soundtrack to my childhood. Really, the soundtrack to my childhood was Guitar Hero 3, the video game back in 2007, 2008. So you had Priestess, The Strokes, Metallica. They had their song 1 in Guitar Hero 3. Rise Against, Poison, Foghat. So that was sort of my soundtrack. Green Day was a huge one. American Idiot came out when I was 7 or 8 years old. So those were all things that just seeped into my subconscious mind without even trying. Those were influencing me and shaping my taste in rock music. So Metallica was the first band that I learned on the guitar, them and AC/DC. And once I got good at guitar, like once you can learn a Metallica song, you can learn most things. So that's one of the reasons I love them, and the chances they took musically were incredible. That's the soundtrack. As I got older, I started appreciating pop music and music with memorable pop melodies a little bit more, which is how I got into Nickelback. And when I got into Nickelback, this was 2011, they were still laughed at and scoffed at as one of the hated bands. They're sellouts. They're all over the radio. His voice, on and on and on.
This is what I tell everybody about Nickelback. Dimebag Darrell was a huge fan.
Dime was a huge fan. Oh, yeah.
Tell me Dimebag is wrong about anything, and I'll tell you you're wrong. So if Dimebag Darrell thinks they're cool, they must be cool.
Oh, yeah. You're probably very aware of that song Side of a Bullet that they have where it features Dime's guitar solo outtakes.
Absolutely.
So, they can rock out. So, the older I got, Rise Against, because they were politically aware, and not even about the politics, but it was more about they had just a deeper level of thinking to their music, which I could appreciate too. And then you have bands like Nickelback that don't take themselves as seriously. It's just good, great sing-along songs. So yeah, those are two of the biggest bands that I fell in love with the older I got.
We talk about the soundtrack. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, yes. I was just going to say, but the soundtrack to the childhood, I'm very grateful for the fact that I just tripped into rock and roll rather than, I mean, we're all biased, but I think rock and roll is the best. I think it's better than R&B, but we borrow from other genres, but I'm a rock guy at heart.
It's so funny how people get exposed to it, because recently I talked to Jack Collins from Dead Poets Society, and he didn't really grow up listening to rock music, but then he went to the movies and saw School of Rock with Jack Black.
Yeah.
And the soundtrack to that became his favorite music. And then his mom showed him that she could play Smoke on the Water on an acoustic guitar, and everything changed. And you're talking about the influence of Guitar Hero 3. It's just so funny how younger kids are just going to bump into rock music in some of the non-traditional places.
Totally non-traditional places. And it's funny because Guitar Hero 3 was a non-traditional place, but that was 18 years ago, something like that. They came out a long time ago, but I became addicted to that video game. I was so obsessed about nailing the songs with those 5 little buttons. And I was a socially awkward, sort of outcast in school, and music and rock music, especially like you were saying, how there's a tighter knit community that became the escape for me. So no matter what happened at school, no matter how frustrated I was, how that girl rejected me, how I can't fit into a particular group of friends, I knew I could come home, and at first it was play Guitar Hero 3 and play One by Metallica, but then it was learn the real guitar, and I could vent and sort of take that frustration and channel it into something productive. And what's really interesting is I find in pure pop music, there isn't as much loyalty to the artist as there is in rock. The first question, if I were to go to my brother, who's just a casual music listener, hey, check out this band, the first question will be, how popular are they? Whereas if I brought it to a rock fan, a pure rock fan, they would say, oh, what do they sound like? Play a few songs. There's a difference in mentality with the rock people.
Yeah, and it's something that maybe we're a little harder to break through to. But once we love you forever, which is shown by the longevity of career. I mean, look at the Stones. They're going to sell out stadiums in their 80s this summer. Because once people love you, they love you forever. And rock bands that show loyalty back to their fans, that relationship is there for as long as the bands feel like touring, that the fans are always going to show up.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what's great, where you have some pop acts that I love, like Florida Georgia Line or Chainsmokers. If they miss on their next album, they'll lose a big contingent of people who are paying attention to them. Avenged Sevenfold can miss 3 albums in a row and they will still have the exact same amount of fans. That's the beauty of being in this game too, is that loyalty.
Yeah, absolutely. So can we talk about your guitar playing? Because you don't know me well, but I have zero musical ability whatsoever. Can't sing, can't songwrite, have no melody. If you've seen me dance, you know I'm drunk. I have no rhythm. But I'm fortunate with what I do that I'm surrounded by people who have those abilities. And so I love peeling your brains apart like an onion to figure out where this comes from. Does musical ability run in your family?
So this is a great question because we thought for years that it didn't. Not my mom, dad, nobody could play, brother, sister, first cousins, nobody could play. It wasn't until 2019 we had this family reunion, the first family reunion we ever went to. Second cousins, third cousins, and fourth cousins all congregating into this tent in Leamington, Ontario, where most of my family is from. And all of my second cousins and third cousins, I didn't plan this. I just showed up, didn't really know what was going on, went in blind. Everyone had performances lined up. My second cousin plays the violin. My third cousin plays the guitar. My fourth cousin plays the piano. I was like, are you kidding me right now? So I think distantly it does run in the Diab family, but not immediately. It was the funniest thing. My immediate family, we were just laughing hysterically the whole time. It was like a big aha moment. Oh, that's where this all came from. So distantly, there's some musical talent, but I got to tell you, I came from parents who took a much more conventional path in life. Business degrees. Dad climbed up the corporate ladder, went from picking tomatoes when he was 12 years old, and became very successful in the world of finance and corporate America. And I think their initial vision for me was to pursue being a doctor or a lawyer, architect, or something more traditional. And when I got into Metallica, Nickelback, and Rise Against, those three particular bands, I'd heard the way they talk about music, their passion, their values, what they stood for, how they were all professionals, even though the music was amazing. And I said, why don't I take what my parents want for me to do, which is to be excellent at whatever I do, and just put all of that into music? So I do think a lot of it was self-driven musically. I don't know how much of it came from the bloodline. I have to give credit to the bloodline after going to that reunion, but a lot of it was just falling so deeply in love with music that I would do whatever it took to learn and get good and hone the craft.
So who put the guitar in your hands the first time? Where did it come from?
My parents, this is the funniest thing. So I actually didn't start playing the guitar. It was Guitar Hero 3, and then hanging out at buddies' houses, some of their older brothers had drum kits. And so I actually wanted to be a drummer. And when I was 11, I begged my parents for my 12th birthday, please just get me a drum kit. That's
and they
all
were
I
like,
wanted.
please no, please
They were
no.
like, please. How funny is that? They're like, nah, you know what? Fine. But on the condition you have to learn the guitar. My mom looked me in the face. I'll buy you a drum set, but you have to learn the guitar. I think they thought maybe because there are notes on the guitar and there's more you can do in terms of learning the notes musically.
It's quieter, Jake. It's quieter.
True. I'm in denial.
It's smaller. It's more portable.
Yeah.
I feel bad for drummers because they just have so much shit to haul around. And their parents are the ones that are going to get stuck with the band coming over and playing in their garage.
It's so true. It's so true. Those are considerations. So I reluctantly learned to play the guitar, but I'm very glad I did because now that's where I spend the bulk of my time musically rather than drums.
What was the first song, the first riff?
First riff was Back in Black. That was the very first riff I learned with my guitar teacher. Bump, da-na-na, da-na-na. Classic. Just a classic answer.
The brilliance in the simplicity. It's iconic for a reason.
Yep. That was, 30 years after the song came out, I'm sitting there learning how to play Back in Black. It's pretty remarkable. And I'm a huge AC/DC fan. They were my first concert too. The funniest AC/DC story, I went with my dad, the Palace in Auburn Hills in Michigan, and 12 years old, middle class, sheltered upbringing. I'm like, mid-concert, I'm like, hey, Dad, what's that? He's like, son, it's this thing called marijuana. That was my introduction to marijuana.
Why does it smell like a skunk in here, Dad?
Yeah, why do they have all these devil horns and I'm smelling skunk? He's like, oh, God, don't do any of that.
My husband and I had to have that conversation at a Jelly Roll show with the kids.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. What was that conversation like?
Why does it smell like a skunk in here?
Yeah.
And then it was, that's what marijuana smells like, guys. Let's stay away from that. And in my head, I'm like, I can't believe I have to say these things out loud.
Yeah. That's one of the that's one of the consequences to being a especially in rock and roll. You know, they like to have a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I love about the show is that I get to keep fans in touch with the bands that they love, that they've loved for decades in some cases. And I also get to expose them to brand new bands like Autumn Kings. So you're up in Canada, you're playing Guitar Hero 3, listening to Metallica records. How does the band find each other?
The band finds each other in a grocery store. Is the short of it. There's a place called Freshco, which if you think for my Midwestern peeps, I don't know if they have Kroger in Massachusetts.
I know what it is, but I don't have them around here.
Right. So Kroger, think just like your typical grocery store. I worked at a grocery store and I met Joe, the other lead singer. He was stacking bananas and I was a cashier. Both hated our jobs. One day we sat there in the break room. We happened to have the same lunch break and we just started BSing and chit-chatting. And, oh, you play music? I play music. Oh, we should start a band sometime. And it was one of those empty promises that a lot of musicians tend to make. Yeah, let's jam sometime. It's like when you tell your friend we should hang out sometime. Nothing happens for a year and a half. I get out of high school. I'm 18. I need to find a band with a lead singer. Okay, I'm scrolling one day on Facebook and I see some dude come up playing the acoustic guitar with a girl that I was friends with this girl on Facebook. I'm like, is that Joe from Freshco? Oh. And I'm like, oh, actually, I took his number. So I had an iPhone at the time, but when I got Joe's number, I had my BlackBerry. This is when they were still in style, like 2013. I go back to my closet, dig up Joe's number from my BlackBerry, put it into my iPhone, shoot him a text. Hey, bro, we should jam like in a couple days. You want to jam? And I give him a list of 24 songs to learn in 2 days as a test to see if he was serious about starting a band. And he learned all 24 of them. And I thought, you know what? This is my guy. And it was off to the races from there. So it all started in a grocery store.
That is hilarious.
I always say, thank you, Freshco. Thank you very much. Yeah.
I started on the air as a DJ. I had worked in radio and in music for years before that, but I got my own show in the spring of 98. So smack dab in the middle of this era in rock, the new metal era, if that's what you want to call it or whatever, where all of these bands came out following the grunge movement, right? So all the grunge bands were still huge, but these new metal bands, Deftones, Korn, Seven Dust, Limp Bizkit, like all of these bands had come out. And it was an era of music fashion-wise, sonically, that I think a lot of older people didn't understand. I think a lot of people that have kind of already formulated their musical taste, the next wave of music coming out, they always kind of turn their nose up at it and be like, you know, the hair metal fans looked at grunge and were like, ugh. The grunge fans looked at new metal and were like, ugh. And now, as is with the 70s, it happened with the 80s, it happened with the early 90s in grunge, that new metal era is now back in this major way. Never mind the fact that most of those bands, again, like we were talking about longevity of career, are still out there.
Yeah, totally.
But what they've done is inspire a new generation of bands. And I don't mean to stereotype Autumn Kings, but there is obvious inspiration that comes from bands like Linkin Park in your sound. And for somebody that was around for all of this stuff the first time, the fact that some of that stuff is back in a new way with a new generation of bands makes me very happy because I love all that music.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. And I think you nailed that timeline perfectly. And that's exactly right. Linkin Park is a huge inspiration of ours because they were so dang innovative and they were polarizing, right? When Hybrid Theory came out in 2000, they were incorporating all these different genres together. But I still look back at that era and I think that band has to be top 3, if not number 1, most distinct. Like the sound choices, the incorporation of screaming, rapping, DJing, and hooky melodies is something that Autumn Kings definitely looks up to. And it's funny how music, kind of like fashion, it all works in cycles. And that's exactly right. And nothing makes me happier than seeing new metal and rock and heavy stuff come back to the forefront. I remember Nickelback telling a story that throughout the mid 90s and even the late 90s, rock actually wasn't that big for a couple years. It was like Spice Girls and things like that. And then that new metal wave hit, and then Linkin Park, Nickelback, Disturbed.
When you're
2000s.
seeing Fred Durst and Jonathan Davis on TRL with Carson Daly on MTV, spending $1 million on like the Freak on a Leash video.
Holy crap.
It was ridiculous.
Unbelievable. Yeah, unbelievable. And we're grateful. And you know what's funny is rock has gotten this rap where it's sort of over there. It's a smaller genre. Country, pop, and hip hop are all at the forefront. But if you look at bands like Sleep Token or Mainskin, and you know, Autumn Kings is starting to gain some heat, and our peers are starting to gain some heat. Like, rock is pretty freaking big. It might not be getting on this corporate top 40 radio a lot of times, but just take a look at the live shows and you'll see that it is alive and well, and always has been.
Well, that's the thing. You might not see the rock and metal Grammys get handed out on prime time, but when you look at merch sales, streaming, downloading, and concert ticket sales, rock is still the biggest genre of music there is.
So dominant. Yeah.
It's just that we're the freaks that everybody wants to just kind of look at and go, ugh, here they come.
Yeah.
But I kind of like that about it, though.
Yeah, you wouldn't want it any other way.
Yeah.
Right? That makes us unique.
I like the fact that I think rock every now and again needs to kind of go back underground and kind of become a different kind of zombie that crawls out of the grave again. They've been saying rock is dead for decades. It's not going anywhere.
No, it's not going anywhere. It's like if you look at Bring Me the Horizon or the guys in I Prevail who live like 10 minutes away from me in Michigan, no one's complaining. And even the idea, this is what's really interesting, is streaming has revolutionized things for rock artists. If you can just be a little bit savvy with managing your band on your own, you can make a really good, comfortable living. And I think gone are the days, or at least they're really starting to go away, where the bands are getting screwed over by the record labels and these predatory business deals where they get robbed of all their money. The people that I'm talking to, there's this emergence of a middle class, an upper middle class, and then even a wealthy class of people who, if they can just handle things right in rock, not pop, not hip hop, not country, you can do the music and make it exactly how you want without somebody telling you how it's supposed to sound to try to fit this cookie cutter mold of radio, and have a really successful career. And it's, of course, it's not about the money, but let's be real. We all want to at least make a baseline living where we can take care of our families, take care of our kids, and continue to make more music and invest in production and all the other things. So it's a really exciting time. I was just talking to the band about it a few days ago. I'm like, I'm so glad we are artists in 2024 and not in 2008. I talked to my buddies, like in the band's New Medicine. We became friends with Jake, the singer. He talks about, you know, what they sort of went through. It's unbelievable. I can't even fathom it. So it's a good time right now to be in a rock band.
Well, and it harkens back to the artists that have come before you, that you're learning from their mistakes, right? About like, I've known the guys from Seven Dust since the debut album came out. And when I talked to those guys, I asked Clint Lowry once, you know, what advice would you give your former self? And he was like, at least one person in the band has got to know how to read contracts.
Yes, right.
You know, and back then bands were just like, all right, we want to sign this deal. The internet wasn't what it is now. You know, you couldn't get famous off of TikTok or YouTube the way that you can now. And you needed those record deals. And now there's bands like Dirty Honey that are these independent artists that are making a go of it without selling their soul. Or you can do what the guys in Oxymorons did and actually be lawyers first and then negotiate your own deals because you're an actual lawyer and can read the fine print.
Yes, incredible skill set. And that's funny, Oxymorons, we're actually sharing the same management roster. So they are true colleagues of ours and they are sick. Like,
I love those guys so much. We drank pitchers of pina coladas at a rooftop pool party back in September last year in Vegas together.
Yeah.
So much fun. They are. I met them because they were opening up for Corey Taylor.
Yes, that's right. They did that big tour with him.
Yeah, and they are this next generation of rock, right? That's kind of taking it in a new place, but also hearkening back to those that came before them. They're just kind of doing it in a new way, and they're awesome. And they're such nice guys, and they're so fun.
Yes, yes, they are fun too. So yeah, it's amazing what can be done with rock. There's more responsibility too, as independent artists. Like if you're gonna go independent, it sounds sexy, you get to keep your ownership, you might be able to make more money. There's also a lot more responsibility that comes with it. I mean, posting content all the time is a huge undertaking, and a lot of people get scared about it. I think the vast majority of artists don't love that idea. But you know what? If all you got to do is film a 30-second video of you lip syncing to yourself playing a song, come on. Do you want that, or do you want a label to own all your stuff, invest $400,000 into a music video, or $1 million, like Freak on a Leash, like you were saying? Like, what do you want? So I'm not complaining about it, but we're also more willing to do the work. This might come from my parents' background where they said, you can do music and we'll support you all the way as long as you put 150% into every aspect of it. So I thank them for that. But
well, there's a lot of noise, like getting through. I've worked for big, giant radio corporations, and now, I own my own business. And since COVID, everything has changed. So I understand what you're talking about. When you're in control of your own destiny, it's a lot more work. And you're also fighting to get through because everybody is just being barraged with stuff.
Yeah.
So while all of this new technology gives you free opportunities to market yourself, you're still competing against the big guys. You're still trying to get people's attention.
Yeah. And this is what's interesting, right? Because now a lot of people are talking about the importance of being independent, but having a team. I mean, we have amazing management that's representing us. We have a bunch of labels that are reaching out to us. A lawyer just reached out to us today. Having a team of champions, you need the village. Like that principle I still fully believe in. I don't want to sit in my studio all day and do everything myself. Number one, it's not as fun. Number two, it's not as efficient. But it's interesting what you were saying. Now you're managing your full business. So you're not just the radio personality. You're not just coming up with interesting content on the podcast. You're managing all the other aspects of it that are not fun, that nobody wants to do.
Designing my own merch, updating the website, managing social media stuff, dealing with lawyers, copyright attorneys, trademarks. It's like,
never ending. Yeah, you're in the shower, you're thinking about it. You're hanging out with your kids, you're thinking about it. It's like all consuming, but at least you control your destiny more. And that trumps all the extra work you have to do, at least in our opinion.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, it is something where, if it sucks, you own it. And if it's great, you own it. So it's good and bad. When you're in control of your destiny, if you're successful, you look like a genius. And if you fall on your ass, you're an idiot.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
At least it's, you're dying by your own sword then, I guess.
Dying by your own sword.
Yeah.
Yep, that's exactly right. Yep.
I got to ask you some of the questions that I always ask artists when they come on the show. I got to ask you the geezer question. So I talked to Geezer Butler a while ago on the show. He told me that he had 13 cats and 5 dogs. And when I asked him how he keeps track of them all and how he comes up with names, he said that him and his wife, Gloria, named them all after gangster rappers. After I picked myself up laughing off the floor, I now am forced to ask artists, do you have pets and what do you name them? And I tell them, if you think it's a stupid question, blame Geezer Butler. Okay,
so Geezer, I've never met you, but I love you and you're a beast. I'm blaming you for this one. I don't have any pets. So I don't have any pets. This will really disappoint the pet owners, but Joe has a dog named Rocket, and I don't know where he got the inspiration for Rocket from, but I know he loves his dog. And my girlfriend has a dog named Oakley. Where did Oakley come from? I should ask these questions and be better. All I know is that people who have their pets love their pets, and I respect that, and I understand why they love their pets. But me personally, I'm like kind of clean, not clean freak, but the hair. Oh,
this is Wednesday.
So what's the inspiration for Wednesday?
Come on now. Addams Family. OG Addams Family, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
See, one of the benefits of working for yourself and being in your own studio is that every day is take your dog to work day.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
Say hi,
That's
Wednesday.
right there. Hey, buddy. What do you think?
She's like, you woke me up from a nap for this bullshit?
Yeah, I don't want to hear this guy anymore. I don't want this half Canadian, half American. You got to be in one or the other. That's awesome.
when you're an independent band, you're going to be touring a lot. You're going to be driving yourself. You're going to be late nights on the highway.
Yeah.
You stop at a truck stop in the middle of the night. Especially, I don't know how the truck stops are in Canada, but American truck stops are legendary.
Yeah.
What are you looking for in the truck stops, and what's the weirdest thing you ever got?
Oh, that's so funny. So yes, Canada, their truck stops are legendary. They'll have like an array of restaurants. And then, of course, the restrooms. I'm looking for, I mentioned Tim Hortons earlier, I think. I forget if we were on air yet or not.
Yeah.
Or on the pod. A turkey bacon club sandwich. Okay. I think they call it a hoagie here at the Tim Hortons that they have in Michigan. I want a sandwich. I want, depending on how tired I am, I want a large black coffee to keep me caffeinated and awake. If I'm awake enough, but I just need something out of boredom, I will get a hot chocolate. And a water fountain would be good so that I'm not overly dehydrated and missing my water bottle. So sandwich, coffee, hot chocolate, and a nice water fountain. One that's not dirty, though.
When you come to Boston, you're going to be looking for a grinder. Or that's what we call sandwiches. And a bubbler, which is the water fountain.
Oh, interesting. A grinder and a bubbler. I actually just wrote that down on my notes app.
Yeah. Now you sound like a masshole. If you walk into a place and go, I need a grinder and a bubbler, they're going to be like, oh, yeah, he lives here.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I'm not even going to attempt to do the Boston accent when I order those things because I feel like I might get punched in the face. So I'll just order it in my Canadian accent. And
have you ever bought anything weird? Like Justin Chancellor from Tool told me that he got a full suit of armor at a truck stop.
Full suit of armor at a truck stop?
Yeah.
No, you kidding me? No, not at all. I think maybe the weirdest thing I did, I don't even know if this is weird, but I used to play the Game Boy like when I was younger, and they'd have those vending machines.
Oh,
and
yeah.
You could like play the game and then it maybe grabs a. I spent like an ungodly amount of money one time. I think like $100 trying to win this freaking Game Boy, even though I already had one at home.
In like the claw game?
Claw game, yeah, the claw game.
Nobody ever wins anything out of the claw game.
It's a rigged system.
Totally rigged.
Yeah. So, I don't know if that's weird, but it was definitely a very disappointing scenario. And, I'm going to go hit them up and I think maybe I'll file a lawsuit.
I got to ask, I ask every songwriter on the show this question. It's by no means a favorite song question, but when you're looking at the craft of songwriting, creating something from nothing.
Yeah.
Give me an example of a song you think is so well crafted that you wish you wrote it. And it can be any genre of music, any artist, that doesn't matter. But when you look at the song from a craft perspective, you go, oh man, I wish I wrote that song. But then you got to break it down and tell me why.
Okay. I've got one. I'm not sure how your fan base and your listeners are going to like this one, but it's Far Away by Nickelback, the love song, the ballad. Yeah. And you could say it's cheesy, it's slow, it's sappy love song. I think the way they crafted the melodies, the way the chords move, like the way that acoustic guitar happens, that single note strumming, I think is one of the most beautiful riffs. The way it builds like a Hollywood movie in the dynamic of the song, I think is absolutely immaculate songwriting. Just the way it builds, the way it comes down, the way it builds back up, the way they change the key of the song on the third chorus, the way you can't even tell, but subtly he's doing this Dr. Seuss wordplay. He'll have parts like, with you, I'd withstand all of hell to hold your hand. There's subtle alliteration, like all of hell to hold your hand. With you, I'd withstand. It's like reading a Dr. Seuss poem, except it's in the form of a beautiful love song. And Chad Kroeger is a huge inspiration to me for songwriting because he has all these little subtle songwriting tricks. And I don't like the word tricks because it sounds like it's a mechanical tool, crafting process, but it's within the confines of real inspiration. So that song to me is an immaculately written song. I also think Champagne Supernova by Oasis is one of my favorites. A little more on the sort of like Brit pop. They're still a rock band. They're not heavy the way we're talking Cedar.
Nominated for induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame this year.
Totally.
And the Gallagher brothers still hate each other. It's epic.
Classic. Like they are the most rock stars that I have ever seen, in my life. But there are also songs like Battery by Metallica, which is my favorite song of all time.
I love that song too.
ridiculously heavy. So I can go from Far Away Nickelback, which is a top 40 pop song that, moms listen to when they go to the mall, to Battery by Metallica, which is like one of the most aggressive thrash metal songs, and the way they played the acoustic, just the movement and the uniqueness and the cleverness. I like to take all these different influences that I have and let it influence me in subtle ways in our music. So you'll hear the Linkin Park, you'll hear the Eminem, you'll hear the Metallica, you'll hear the freaking Florida Georgia Line, but it will sound like Autumn Kings at the end of the day.
Let's talk about the album before I let you go. Book of the Broken. As independent artists, you're releasing music independently, you're touring independently. So what do you want people that are open to new music, that are hearing about you for the first time on the show, what do you want them to know about the record and about your music in particular?
Autumn Kings is a band that likes to sing about hope, inspiration, motivation, and empowerment. I think those are the core tenets of our music. And what's really interesting, and I think this is a hot, controversial take, and I've tested this philosophy and idea with my friends, but I'm 27, and the people around my age group, I think what's happened in this day and age is depression, anxiety, these negative emotions have been so hyper glorified to a level that I almost feel like artists use those words in songs because it's low hanging fruit and it's an easy way to be relatable. And those are real emotions, and we do talk about those in our songs. But what we don't like to do is make songs that seem as if there's no light at the end of the tunnel. And I've seen that a lot with rock, and that's actually one of the reasons I was drawn to Nickelback, is because they had songs that weren't always so dark, or if they were dark, there was always some sort of resolution or some level of hope at the end of it. And when we're making music, we want it to be a joyful experience. That's actually one of the reasons I loved Oasis too, is they went through really hard stuff. Their dad used to beat the crap out of them and all these things, but the music was still beautiful and empowering, and songs about life and philosophies that you hear it and go, okay, I can do better. I can be better. I can kick ass. Like, I don't have to stay in this place. There is hope. There is light at the end of the tunnel. And staying a victim is never the way to do it. You have so much potential in you. And we're not motivational speakers, but we do like to have those sorts of principles in our music. So we want high energy, empowerment. We want you to feel like you're getting punched in the face, or at least having cold water splashed on your face, and be able to stand up, with your shoulders back and your chest out after you hear Autumn Kings. That's what we want you to take from the Autumn Kings experience.
It really is kind of amazing. We were talking about the closeness and the community in rock, and there are so many artists that I think back in the day, it was not something anybody talked about, but there are so many artists now, like Papa Roach and Shinedown and Corey Taylor and Slipknot, that are talking about overcoming demons, that are talking about, mental illness, depression, anxiety, and openly discussing and supporting each other to get over it, which I think is something to really be celebrated. That, this is something that decades ago nobody would have admitted to struggling with. Everybody would have thought you were crazy. It's also something, to go back to our conversation about the military, that veterans never were willing to openly talk about either. And now it is something that you don't feel alone. You feel like there is hope, and that you realize that other people around you are going through it and are at different stages of their recovery in it, and that you can see, wow, it is possible to come out of it, which is kind of spectacular and amazing considering how far we've come in this journey, even acknowledging mental illness as being a problem.
Right. You have to have, a lot of people, especially for guys are very scared to discuss issues and things that they're going through because they feel like they have to stuff it all down, and that, to me, that's never the move. But what the move is acknowledging the way you feel, because everything is temporary. Like, I'm not going to be happy forever, and I'm not going to be sad forever, and I'm not going to be apathetic forever. And so it actually takes a lot of balls to even admit that you have that, right? Sort of like somebody who acknowledges that they have an addiction. And then the question is, what do you do with it after that? Because what we never want to do is be a band that just stays in that down place without talking about maybe we could take some steps. Maybe we could find the strength inside to rise above whatever it is that we're going through. Talk about it. Have that hard conversation with your partner, that thing you've been holding back for 5 years. Like, that's an act of courage and bravery, you know, and having the support in the community is another huge thing, like you're talking about. I think that is a form of therapy in and of itself, even if it's not conventional therapy, right?
No, I think that was the hardest part for COVID for a lot of rock and metal fans, is that we go to those shows to commune together and to exercise our demons and to be, I call it the land of misfit toys, that we're the crazy ones everywhere else, but we're together at those shows, and not being able to get together for so long was really hard.
Yes, totally was hard. And that's why I think concerts are booming like crazy right now, because people miss that. People really did. And now we're so long past COVID, thank God, that it all feels normal again. But there was a long period of time. It felt like an eternity, right? But thank God it's all back. And I think that just the general psyche and the spirit of people is starting to be a lot better. I know there's every reason to look at the downside, especially in the US, when I go to a Planet Fitness and I see the news all over the TV, and it's like, dude, I just want to work out.
Yeah.
You know,
I don't want to run on a treadmill and watch 7 different networks' depressing version of what's going on in DC right now. Like,
we don't need to know. So despite all that stuff that's being thrown, I actually think the general spirit of people is getting better, especially than what it was a few years ago, which is exciting.
And for all of us, just being able to go and get together at concerts, and it's proving in the last couple of years and this year to be an unbelievable era in rock music.
Yeah, I know.
So much great music coming out, so many new bands. Some older bands are coming out with unbelievable new albums.
Yeah. No, it's all over. Yeah, it's amazing. Concerts, Autumn Kings, we're probably going to end up going to Europe, whether it's this year or next year, and all over the US. And it's going to feel good, because for us, we've just been writing for the last year or 2 years and haven't fully felt it, even though we've been out of the COVID woods for a good bit now. We haven't felt that consistent, other than the military tour we did in the summer, Japan, South Korea, and Guam. We did 9 shows. We haven't done a full string of shows yet. So that is, I kept telling the guys a couple of weeks ago, I'm like, boys, I love writing, I love studio. I just want to get on the road. Like, let's do 200 shows this coming year. You know what I mean?
You're going to get to show 158 and be like, why did I say 200?
Why did I say that? Why did I say that? Curse it.
Well, hopefully some of those shows are going to be in New England. So yes, we look forward to seeing Autumn Kings live. I look forward to meeting you in person.
Yes, absolutely. That would be great. I'll have to come see you on Wednesday.
Yeah, come hang out in MCHQ, and obviously we'll get everybody out to go to the show and see you guys live.
Love it. Well, that sounds great. And thank you so much for the chat.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime. It was so nice to meet you.
Yes, great to meet you too, Carrie.
All right, we'll see you soon.
Sounds good. We'll see you later. Thanks.
Go Bruins.
I'll pretend like I didn't hear that. Going.
There he is, Jake Diab from Autumn Kings. You can check out their brand new song, Sleep When I'm Dead, in the corresponding playlist that's linked in the show notes of this episode. I make a playlist for every full-length episode of the Mistress Carrie podcast that features all of my guest music and all the artists and songs that we referenced in the interview. You'll also find all of the links for Autumn Kings and all the Mistress Carrie links too. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to the Mistress Carrie podcast. New full-length episodes come out every Wednesday, plus every weekday you get the sit rep. The Situation Report gives you all of your rock news, music headlines, and entertainment updates in about 5 minutes. And you never know when we're going to release a bonus episode. Join me live every Tuesday night for my weekly video show, Cocktails in the War Room. You can watch it live on my official Facebook page, YouTube channel, and Instagram. And you can always find me on the radio. Get the details on all that and more at mistresscarrie.com. The Mistress Carrie Podcast, a proud member of the Pantheon Podcast Network.